Welcome to Next Play. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Next Play. Super pumped to have former NHL player Jamal Mayers on with us. Jamal, what's going on?
How we doing?
Not bad. Excited to have you on.
I'm glad to be here. This should be fun.
Awesome. Well, I always have to open up and let everybody know a little bit about your past. Everyone knows who you are, but I'm going to run through your accomplishments real quick. And most athletes hate this part, but it'll only take, a few minutes. Okay. So you had a full ride scholarship to Western Michigan University, scored 158 points, and recorded 181 penalty minutes in your collegiate career. Drafted by the Blues in 1993. You're not that old. As the 89th overall pick. Played 915 games throughout 15 seasons in the NHL on 5 different teams. That's a lot of teams. Is that unusual? I got to stop there. Is it 5 teams unusual in a career?
I think if you play, more than 10 years, you're likely to bounce around. As I told my wife, if I play as long as I want to, because I played 10 years in St. Louis, but I kept telling her, well, I could make it up on the back end, and I did. So
yes.
I think the last 4 years, I was on 5 teams or 4 teams. So it's like to bounce around.
All right, that makes sense. Yeah. Of course, our favorite is the Chicago Blackhawks. We are Blackhawks fans over here. Had 90 goals, 129 assists in your career, and you won the Stanley Cup with the Blackhawks. Owen, I don't know how old you were, 2013, but you remember that.
Hell yeah.
We went crazy over here. Internationally, you represented Canada 3 times at the World Championship in 2000, 2007, 2008. Which included helping Canada win the gold medal in 2007 and the silver medal in 2008. Was that cool?
Yes. Unreal.
Yeah.
When we won in 2007, it was in Russia, in St. Petersburg. Unfortunately, the next year we lost when it was in Canada. We lost to Russia at home. But winning it in Russia, or winning it at any point was pretty special because you're playing for your country. It's a different feeling.
For sure. And you're currently working as a broadcaster and analyst with NBC Sports. And really cool on the list, you are an author. I love that book, Hockey is for Me. Is there another book coming at some point, do you think?
Well, oddly enough, I wrote like 5 or 6 of the books. When I was with the Hawks, we ended up publishing one of them. But we'll see. I'm hoping that we can turn it into an animated series, perhaps. I'm working with a company called Lion Forge here in St. Louis. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But it was a fun project. Started it when my little guy was 4 or 5 years old, and just wanted to get creative and do something different. And instead of reading a book to him, I created one, and it kind of grew from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate that. Well, here on Next Play, we talk about the mental side of the game. I also know you're a coach. We'll get to that later, and the trickiness of that, harder than being a player, I would imagine, in some ways. But you and I spoke earlier before, just to get to know each other, and we talked about mindset and mental toughness when you were playing, and how it's there wasn't a name for it. So I'm curious, over your 15-year career, how it evolved, the way it was talked about and the way you sort of approached it.
Well, I think that, first of all, anyone who makes it to that level has a certain set of belief in themselves, but it doesn't come there by accident. I think it's a mental toughness is any athlete that gets to a high level, like any skill, you have to work on it. And I think the tools perhaps have changed, and maybe perhaps the recognition of how important it is has changed over time. But I think it was always there. And I think that we're probably a little bit more aware of the tolls perhaps that the pressures can have on athletes, particularly younger ages. And I think the coping mechanisms and the coping skills and the skills to become great at something have become more readily available to kids, and recognizing within themselves whether or not they're struggling and finding ways to cope is also a challenge. I think for me, first and foremost, it was having that belief system that I could do it. And I think that was established pretty early on. When I say early on, I mean around 15, 16. I thought, what, if I dedicate myself and I'm focused on this. I'm going to put my head down and get to work. And I think that that's the most important thing, is believing that you can do it and believing that it's possible. That to me is the first and most important baseline component. And then once you have that, you're a little bit easier to handle tiny failures, things that don't go well, because you have this, you're resolute in the belief that it's going to happen. And I think that I was stuck in that. I was stuck in the fact that it was going to happen. I was going to make it happen, and was willing to put in the work, I think, to make it happen.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. Jumping back a little bit, talking about the 5 teams that you played on, and obviously being in the NHL at such a young age, how was that, like, switching over and adapting to new environments that different teams had, and, like, accepting the different roles that the teams had you kind of fulfilling?
Yeah, I think that, well, coming out of college, I think every player that plays in the NHL at some point, whether it's 16, 17 or whatever it was one of the top players on their team. And that was no different for me. I mean, I was in the top scoring for my college team from sophomore, junior, and senior year, or had over a point a game. So coming to the professional ranks, I looked at the roster and realized, well, that's not going to happen here. I've got to find a different way to get myself there. And fortunately, in the minors, I had my coach was a former NHL player who played. He just retired, Greg Gilbert.
Oh, yeah.
And he played a similar way that I played in my NHL career. And he was just honest with me and said, you're not going to play there as a top 2-line guy. Like, you have to be hard to play against. You're going to have to learn how to kill penalties. You're going to have to take pride in the defensive side of the game. You're going to have to create energy for your teammates. You're going to have to fight occasionally. And I never been in a fight until I played pro. So I didn't play junior. I played college. And when I played in Canada at 16, 17, there was I wasn't fighting. I had other guys in our team to do that. So my role coming into the NHL was a little bit different, but to me, it was either I stay in the minors and try to push through and be resistant to it, or do I listen to this coach who's telling me my best and easiest path and most likely path, regardless of the team, will be to take on this role, this particular role, and this is how they see me. And instead of resisting it, I said, okay, if that's the way it's going to take, then I'm going to be the best at that particular role and work to get to that point. So I think that was my focus after that. But I was lucky in having a coach like Gibby, who was pretty honest, brutally honest, that was my path to make it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like I'm hearing flexibility and trust in, like, a little bit of your mindset, that a lot of athletes get stuck and it has to look a certain way. But when I hear you talk about it, you're like, I put trust in my coach, and the way you talk to yourself seemed to help you sort of persevere. Obviously, you have talent. I mean, all at that level, all of these athletes do. So, and when I think about hockey and it lacks diversity, and you've been known to talk about that and bring a lot of attention in a great way, to people of color, and especially the Black community around the sport. Was there a mindset in not, having few sort of role models for you that look like you in that way, or how did you kind of, manage that lack of diversity in the sport?
It's a great question. I think that just naturally as a kid, you look and you kind of trying to figure out, well, where do I fit in, and how does this make sense, and where are the people that look like me that play the game? And there were a few. There weren't many. Grant Fuhr, Claude Vilgrain, Tony McKegney, Dirk Graham. There were a few out there that I knew of. I played with a guy named Anson Carter when I was 15 at Don Mills Flyers in Toronto, who went on to have a great career. So you knew it was possible, but there weren't many examples. I think that it was challenging. I think that I looked at it honestly, mentally, as just another obstacle, as if someone were to say that you weren't quick enough, or you couldn't process the game quite fast enough, or whatever. Any kind of negative someone would say, I would just think, like, I'm going to prove them wrong, and I'm going to use it as fuel. And I think early on, I'm not going to lie to you, there were issues and there was instances that did happen, unfortunately. But I think that, credit to my brother who was 6 years older and my mom, they were really adamant about using it as fuel and going out and proving people wrong. And that meant going out and scoring more goals and going out and producing and letting your play dictate and the naysayers, if you will. So I think as you get older, you want to be a good example as well. And so as you get into your career, you know that there's other kids that are probably look like you, and you want to make sure that you're doing the right things and playing the game the right way, and hopefully inspire them to want to do the same. So not to digress, but I think as a sport, it's important for us to make sure that we make it inclusive. And that's not just words. I think it's, at the end of the day, what I love about our game is that it teaches so many great life lessons, from selflessness, hard work, compassion, teamwork, your relentlessness. Unlike any other sport, you need your teammates more than any other sport. So there's so many values that you learn in the game. And my hope is that we continue to grow the game and continue to make the game more inclusive, where parents that look and see that their kids perhaps don't look like these kids, but the game opens their arms, where parents are like, you know what, that's a good place. That's a safe place. That's a nurturing place for my kid to get into. And, I think that's the next evolution of our game, is where are we going to go from here, and how are we going to make kids and families, and most importantly parents, because they're not going to put their kids in the game where they don't think they can thrive. So we'll see where it goes, but I think it's heading in the right direction. And I actually am very encouraged by today's players. I have met with several of them in regard to this space about DEI and educating them in that way. And I think that they see what other sports are doing. They see what the world is all about. It doesn't matter if they're from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. They've got friends from all over the world in different places. And so I think I'm very encouraged by today's players that want to help grow the game and understand the value of growing the game and what it means, and the impact that they can have.
Yeah, the impact. Yeah, and the safety. I love that word. And prove them wrong is one of our favorite mantras. Owen's a mindset coach and uses that one quite a bit. Yeah. I have to lead you in, Owen, to your favorite part of hockey. And I know it's a question you have.
I was definitely most excited to ask this question. Talking a little bit about the fighting, I know you mentioned it earlier. It was one of the roles that you kind of had to adapt to. How is that mentally, going into games, knowing you might need to drop the gloves against, a tougher guy? Is that nerve-wracking, knowing shit, I might need to fight someone tonight? Or
Absolutely. I think that when you're younger, and when I say younger, I mean when you're 18 or 20. When I started my pro career, I was 20. So when you're 20 to 26, you're like, let's go. I don't really care. Let's do this. As you get older, it changes. The dynamic changes, right? So, did I get nervous before games and think about it? Absolutely. The good thing for me, honestly, Owen, is that it wasn't my sole role.
Yeah.
So there was other guys where that was their role, and I'll explain the difference. So for me, I was more like a middleweight type of fighter. So the reason for me to fight were a few reasons. One, I'm reacting to something that negatively happened on the ice, and I've got to go respond to it. That becomes emotional. Easy to do that in the sense of getting upset and fighting. Yeah. The second reason would be perhaps something would happen to me, and I've got to stick up for myself. Yeah. Another way, you're emotionally invested, easy to respond in the sense of that. And the third one would be, I don't like the way our team's playing. I got to change something. I've got to go in and do something about it and change the momentum. Again, I can emotionally invest in those three reasons. Where the most impressive and perhaps even more difficult category is the fourth one, where you're talking heavyweights, that really don't exist anymore, but they were fighting for no reason, just that everybody in the building wanted. They're not even angry about something. They just get out there, they line up, and they know they've got to fight this animal across from them. That, to me, I don't know how they did that. That job, I don't understand it, because they weren't upset. They weren't mad. Nothing happened. They just knew they had to fight the toughest guy in the other team before the game even happened. So I was lucky because I was emotionally invested in what was happening. Doesn't mean I wasn't afraid. Doesn't mean I wasn't scared. I think that I was definitely nervous before every fight, and I think if you weren't, those are the moments where you get hurt.
Yeah,
you get caught. So, and then you start to learn. Okay, I got to start preparing myself in the summer. And I'm being honest. I started taking Krav Maga, which is a Israeli defense fighting, and one of the few martial arts where it's offensive. Most martial arts are defensive, where you're reacting to somebody. This is one where it's very offensive.
Yeah.
And one of the takeaways I got from that was, how many people like to get punched in the face? No one. But that taught me to actually watch the punches come, which versus like, anyone gets hit, they put their head down, which is probably the worst thing in the world you could do. So doing that, even though you're getting hit, it's like, at least you're like taking a glancing punch, or at least you're seeing it coming. But it takes some work to get there. But eventually I got there where I could be a little bit more comfortable in those really difficult situations.
All right. So you work with kids. We got to go. That was a great lead in. And lessons, as a coach, what do you see as, the biggest challenge? You work with kids through the GOAL program, which is get out and learn. And so I'm curious, what are you finding as challenges or with being a coach and trying to instill some of these skills and mental toughness?
Yeah, I think the most important thing for me is, like, I coach my 11-year-old, my son will be 12, so they're peewees. And the biggest thing for me is I have to make sure they know that I care. And so, listen, when I was playing from 12 to 38, I wasn't sure if the coach cared. And at that point, I didn't, and I was actually okay with it. He was my coach. He tells me to go through the wall. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do exactly what he says. And that's it. There's some coaches I think liked me. I'm not really sure. I didn't really have a relationship with my coaches. That's changed. And the game's changed where younger people now, they want to know you care. So I make sure my players know that I care about them first as people and their families, and making sure that they're okay, and that we're good. But then once they know that I care, to me, now they know I can coach them. And sometimes they're going to hear the things that they don't like. Sometimes they're going to hear things that are negative. And what I'm teaching them is that honesty is where they're going to improve. And the challenge is every day for me as a coach is keeping that balance. I want to make sure that I'm still coaching them. Because I think the expectations I don't think kids have changed. I think our expectations of them have changed in some ways. So I hold them to a high standard. And I like to think that once we establish, and I've been with this group for a while, we've established a work ethic level and a level of compete that has become their standard. And so now that it's their standard, I can just remind them that, and ask them, is that up to your standard? Was that the way that we were supposed to play as a team? And we're at a point now where they know that that's not what they did wrong, or that mostly it's effort, because I also like to tell our coaches every year and remind them, we want to reward intention, not the result, because they're not professionals. So I don't want to make them nervous to make a play or want the puck or do things with it. And when they make a play and it doesn't work, I want to talk to them about, that's the right idea. Next time you're going to make it work. I don't want to get them thinking like, oh, don't do that. Right? Because I think you should, to me, it's about, they're going to keep doing it. They're going to keep doing it. They're going to get better at it. They're going to figure it out. So it's an amazing challenge. It's something that I take seriously, something that I think about every day. How are we going to get them to this level? How are we going to get to the next level? How am I going to help this kid? Why is for some reason it's not working with him? I got to find a new way. Maybe it's an assistant coach talking to him try to get it out of him. My approach perhaps isn't working. I'm making him more nervous versus helping him. How do I figure that part out?
Yeah, the
Getting them,
best coaches adjust, in my opinion. Like
yeah,
how talk the way you're talking, because they're not all the same, right? And
right.
some kids, aren't quick to communicate where others are. And so, yeah, I hear it. Yeah.
And sometimes it's just a little quick check-in with them, making sure they're all right before practice starts. I make sure I have little conversations, and it's, so that they see the human side, because they are going to see the other side where I'm pretty intense and I'm not happy. And usually it's my son that gets the brunt of it, because that's just, he gets to hear it. I mean, and my thought is, and I'm putting him in this category, if the 3 or 4 or 5 top players are the ones that you're hard on, well, in my experience, if I'm like 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, and 10 on the team, I'm like, ooh, he's getting upset at him. I gotta do that. So
Yeah.
he does hear a lot of that and get a lot of it. But again, I always come back and check in with him and make sure, like, I'm doing this for you. I'm, check in and make sure he's okay. And so, because it's a challenge, right? You want to, when you're coaching your own kid, it creates its own dynamic that I'm always mindful of, that he's okay as a person, and that we were able to separate the two, because he's 11, so sometimes it's difficult, but we have those constant check-ins.
He might need therapy with me separately.
Exactly.
Owen's always had coaches with intensity.
I love it though. I agree though. There's definitely a fine line. Like if you're always, young and you don't have the relationships, like you said, you don't really respect it. But I've always had tough coaches, and I've always responded better that way. But diving a little bit back into yourself, did you have any like pregame rituals, anything like that to like get you in the zone? Or even when you're coaching, is there anything that you see that your players or you make your team do to kind of like lock in before games? I know a lot of times it's kind of like a personal thing, and that some things work differently and better for others. But was there anything that you specifically did before games to dial in?
Yeah, I think I went to a camp. It was a Canadian national team camp. I didn't make the team. I think it was a U16 team or something like that. But they did have like a mental coach there, and he did this presentation for us where he talked about going through a routine during the national anthem. And from that day forward, I used it. So what I would do during every game during the national anthem, I would envision what I would do on a won and lost draw. Now, I played center and I played wing, so I knew obviously before the game what position I was playing. But I would visualize myself what I would do on a won or lost draw. And typically after that, you're just playing hockey. But It put me in the right frame of mind right before the game, what I was to be doing and what I'm going to be doing on the ice, and got my mind in the right space mentally, so that you can, I think that mental preparation for me, especially with hockey, because it's not like football where it's a set route and it's like, it's all reactionary. It's all reading the game, read and react. So that always helped me to do that prior to the game. Not only that, but just even in the morning before, the morning of the game, even just sitting there stretching, closing my eyes, a lot of visualization, thinking about, simple as, wanting the puck, calm with the puck, want the puck, talk, communicate, visualizing spaces and areas where I'm going to get the puck, holding on to it, kind of just mapping things out in my head that happen over time, because all these things repeat, rinse, repeat. I think that visualization put me in the right frame of mind. And then habitually, I did have a specific routine. Now, that routine got disrupted and destroyed when kids came, and I learned that the routine isn't as important as it used to be, because, well, I plan on having an hour and a half nap, and I got one of them going down for a nap, so no nap.
Yeah.
And then you have a good game and you realize, I guess I didn't need a nap.
Yeah.
And so the routines, my thought was always, I'll keep my routine. If something disrupts my routine, but it's not me, then it's not going to affect, because, you start to get superstitious. For me, it was, if I do try to do my routine and something disrupts it, that wasn't my control. I still tried to do my routine. So nothing no negative thoughts came in.
Yeah.
Okay. So what about with the Blackhawks at 2013? Did the superstitions just grow throughout that, what was it, game 7? You guys won it in game 7 or no?
We won a game 6.
6. Sorry.
But but that team was different. We started the season, I think we didn't lose in 24 games. It was a shortened season, so we didn't start till January, but we didn't lose a game till like the 25th season. There was only 40 game season and 48 game season. So we were a unique team in that I played 17 years to that point, if you count the 2 years in the minors, and I was 38. I never saw a team where we literally could turn it on and off.
Yeah.
And it was, I got me nervous, but we were down 3-1 in the round 2 to Detroit. And I remember we had a team meeting without the coaches, and we went around the room talking about our experiences and coming back from 3-1 and what it was going to take. And I told the group about the 2 times in my career that I did come back down 3-1 and what was my takeaway from those 2 instances. And I think that I flat out told our team that I think there was more to give. I think that we were using the excuse that, I forget who their goalie, I think it was Howard at the time, that Howard was playing too well. And I said, that's what we're going to tell ourselves to make ourselves feel better, but we're not playing hard enough. And at the end of the day, like, we have more to give. And just to take it one game at a time. Don't worry about, we got to win 3 in a row. Let's just win the first one. And so, but that team had so much experience and had so many leaders and guys that have done amazing things. Certainly first ballot Hall of Famers. It was a fun ride to be a part of, but I think that every team goes through those bumpy things. Every team that wins the cup, you wonder, like, oh, that looks so easy, or wow, that was amazing. Every team's journey to win, so difficult. 4 rounds, 2 months long. It's literally a marathon, and it's amazing when you finally get there, for sure.
Yeah. Was there anything, like, different from, like, the mental standpoint? The nerves, I'm sure, were much different during the Stanley Cup, but did you guys try to, like, kind of like you said, like, just treat it like another game, another series? Or was it, like, anything that you guys did a little differently, obviously, for a game that big?
I think there's a guy like Kaner never said much, but before game 6, we were having either it was a dinner the night before, or maybe it was a pregame meal. And he just said, you know what? He said, let the team know, like, guys, this game's going to have momentum swings. Like, there's something we're not expecting that's going to happen. And we just got to stay in the game and stay in the moment and not, like, worry about the result. Just stay present in the game and understand that we're going to find a way. And that's probably my biggest takeaway about that team, is I don't think Corey Crawford gets enough credit. He literally lost his net, I believe, against Nashville during that playoff run, or maybe I'm confusing the 2 different things, but he's a guy that was a winner. And It didn't matter if we had to win 6, like, if he let in 4 goals, he's not letting in the 5th. Like
that's mental toughness right
it's
there,
unbelievable.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, and if you go back and watch him, he is a lesson in mental toughness. Anytime there a goal, let's say a defenseman turned the puck over, Pete's up the middle, goal scored. He never gave his defenseman a stink eye or a bad look. Same thing. Turn around, took a drink from his water, turned back around.
Yeah.
Never once. You never once knew. And if he let in a bad goal, never once knew. He parked it. It was gone. Drink of water, turn around, reset, back again. And so I don't think, like, to me, I put such a premium on winners and winning. And I like the fact that some guys are in the Hall of Fame, maybe being on TV right now, that never won, but win a bunch of games. You got to win. You have to win. And so to me, like, I put Corey above other people that maybe have more wins or maybe played longer. The fact that he won 2 cups is just, I don't think he gets enough credit. it's almost like Grant Fuhrer, because the Oilers are so good offensively. Grant was much the same. They might win 7-5, but he's not letting in that critical goal. He's like, to me, goaltenders that win, I think, is a premium over how many wins they win in the regular season.
Absolutely.
How long do you get to hold that Stanley Cup? What's the rule on that? You know, is it just like a day that you guys all get it?
Yeah, it was basically, I got it like 7 a.m. and then had it until midnight that night. You wish you wouldn't have said this, but it was such a amazing, exhausting, long day. It was so much fun. Lots of friends and family, obviously, and coaches from my past all flew in. It was a ton of fun. But by the end of it, you're like, okay, take it. Even though you can't believe you're saying that, but by the end of it, from going to Children's Hospital, pub crawl, party here, there, take it here. It was a lifelong dream, and
Cool.
I'm glad I have pictures to remember, and I stayed present. I was good. I had a good time, and we had so much fun, and so fun to see your friends and family enjoy it too. I think seeing it in their face and their eyes and their energy is like probably the best part.
For sure.
Yeah, kind of another quick question for you. We talked a little bit about your goalie. Obviously a very mentally tough dude, but is there a way for like you to like define mental toughness? Is there like anything that comes to mind for you when you're like, all right, this is what mental toughness means?
I think for me, when you first said mental toughness, I think of resilience. And to me, resilience is dusting yourself back off when things don't go well. That to me is mental toughness. And there's moments where things that you don't expect are going to happen. And that could be within the game. That could be in a practice. That can be over the course of a season. That could be over the course of a few years. But the people that have the resilience to get back up, dust themselves off, and continue to work will have success. And so that's how I define mental toughness.
I love that.
And I'll give you another example. So to get our kids into the right mindset, we're going to give them this little like index card that's laminated, has their name on it, cool graphics, whatever. But on it, it's going to say a few things. The first side's going to say like what they've done in the last year or two that makes them a great player. Like I'll give you an example. So for my son, on one side of his card, it's going to say you have shown an ability to set the compete level for our team. Next point for him is going to be, at your best, you drive our offense. The next point is going to be, you have stepped up in offensive moments time after time. And then on the other side of the card, it's going to say, if I'm not a hunter, I'm average. My speed is my best weapon. Defending is about my stick position. So there's some affirmations there that are going to be in his little kit bag. And I'm going to ask the coaches, like, we're going to just take different players that we know better than others. And we're going to write that for each player. And that's going to be their little thing that they're going to look at before the game to get them into the right mind space. And as you can tell, almost all positive, but a couple reminders in there to let them know, like, this is what I have to do to be successful, but not too much information to overload them where they're overthinking. All with the idea that we're going to give them the tools to develop their own process for preparing for games, and we'll help give them those examples, but also arming them with, what could be their shield of mental toughness. Because to me, when you also talk about resilience, I also talk about confidence. And not to digress, but one of the things that was most impressive about Kane and Taze, you have to understand, I had played 17 years until playing with them. So I get there, and what was amazing to me about particularly Kaner was he had an unwavering confidence. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy has turned the puck over 4 times. He hasn't scored in 6 games, which is probably an eternity for him. And he's like, give me the puck. I'm going to end this game right now. And I'm like,
I love
I
it.
would be like, don't give me the puck. I don't even know if I want to be out here right now. I've been awful the last 3 games.
Yeah.
But where did he develop that? My thought, and I haven't talked to him about this, is he must have had this from 14 or 15. Doesn't matter if I haven't scored in 4 games. I'm ending this game. And so that's where I'm trying to get our players to, where they get to a point where it's unwavering. And that is powerful stuff. That if you have that, you can withstand a coach that doesn't like you. You could withstand a bad situation. You could withstand playing in a bad team, and maybe the coach, whatever thing that is going on poorly, injury or whatever happens, because you have that foundational element of mental toughness or confidence,
sure.
and that'll help lead you.
What I love about that answer, Jamal, is it helps them know it's a skill and that you're giving them the tools by saying, you're not just born with resilience or, that confidence. You can develop it by continuing to get back up and continuing to talk to yourself differently. And I think it's cool that you're giving him, that messaging to really recognize, that the greats aren't just, born into that they work for it. So that's awesome.
Yes.
We've kept you long enough here, but it's always, I have this thing with hockey players. I think it's the culture. I find every hockey player I meet so humble. That's a thing, right? It's a thing. I feel like hockey players are cool and humble. I don't know.
I think so. I think for the most part, like I give an example to my sister-in-law. I say, like, we're different than basketball players, because since basketball players, their best players sit on the bench for 2 minutes a night, right? Our best players in our game can only play half the game. So at 9 years old, you realize, like, oh no, if we're gonna win, I need that guy down there to be good, feel good, and play good and help us. So I got to make sure he's feeling good about his contribution, or else we're not going to win. And I think that we realize that at a young age, and so because of that, we realize we need everybody, and that makes us appreciate, I think, things more for the most part,
All the
and
roles,
appreciate each other, and appreciate everyone's contribution, and it doesn't matter how good you are, like, you need a team around you. So
That's awesome. Well, we so appreciate this conversation. Do you have a mantra you want to leave us with that is your favorite? You've said a lot already in this podcast. You said find a way, prove them wrong. What were some other? I don't know. But do you have one? Do you have a mantra like that you live by, or that your team?
my biggest advice is be curious. And if you're curious, then you're going to be inquisitive about, how do I do this? How do I do this? And you're going to continue to learn and want to get better. And that curiosity will, whether you found your passion at 8 or 10 or 9 years old, if you remain curious, you will eventually find your passion. So that'd be my biggest advice.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time. I think everyone should go back, these young hockey players, and watch yourself and Corey Crawford if they have some time here, if they're looking to build their mental toughness. And good luck to your team this year,
Thank you.
and your son. I think he has a great coach and obviously a wonderful man. So thank you for your time, and join us next time for another athlete, another story. In the meantime, join us on our website at puresportsmindset.com, or follow us on Instagram at puresportsmindset. And we'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jamal.
Appreciate it. Great to meet you guys. Take care.